Hey, welcome to a very special episode of The Complete Advisor. If you've ever been around me, the one thing you know is that I am always fascinated by the family dynamic in the financial services industry. A lot of advisors work with siblings. They work with their sons or daughters. And I've done the same thing in my career, and so I'm always fascinated at the dynamic when it works and when it works well. What I want to share with you is a very special interview that I did with a father-daughter team, Ken Vander, Hart, and Brittany Ashcraft. They're out of Topeka, Kansas. They have a wonderful practice, but they didn't start there, and they went through some growing pains. And I wanted to share with you their dynamic, how they worked through things. And as a side note, fascinating side note, Ken has since added his son into the practice successfully. So take a listen. Also, if you get a chance, don't forget to like, subscribe so that you're up to date whenever we drop a new episode of the podcast. And I would love your comments. So depending on what mode you're watching or consuming the podcast, I'd love to know what you have to say, and I'll give you a response back. So take a listen. I think you'll enjoy it. One of the biggest dynamics then clearly is, there's all the issues that come along with a practice with multiple advisors. The issues of communication, the issues of senior advisor, junior advisor. But here we throw in the dynamic of father-daughter. The relationship's very strong, a great father-daughter dynamic. Did you have any concerns over possibly affecting that relationship?
Maybe little ones. Because you talk to people, obviously. I didn't know you at the time, but, you saw family relationships or whatever that hadn't worked.
Yeah.
And, maybe a little bit naive, in that to go, yeah, but we're different and we can figure that out. But there was also, I think, a bigger part is we do have open communication. And even though, she probably told Marcy, she did tell Marcy way more things growing up, especially in those junior high and high school years and early years of college. But it was never a thing where, Marcy was never not allowed to tell Dad.
Sure.
So having a good relationship and being open with each other, I guess gave us the courage, whatever that it would be able to work.
Take that step. Mm-hmm. Well, so let's talk about that. So you make the step. Mm-hmm. And I know in a lot of situations, even with non-family, where a junior advisor comes in, a lot of times there can be a lack of communication that then causes, and we talked about this before we got on camera, talk about how did you define the role, how did you set expectations, and how do you manage those expectations?
You talk about it a little bit to try to put something in place to go, here's how our relationship is going to be. Mm-hmm. But I think we had to be a little bit flexible in that, and there had to be some moments in there that we grew. Sure. And kind of unintentionally then further define that relationship. I think I gave you the example, one of the first summer I'm starting work and I have a brand new baby and you're trying to figure out getting everybody to daycare and can I make it to work on time and all that. And I think early on those first couple months there was hey, you're not going to lose this job and I know you're struggling in the mornings, but can you make sure you're here on time? And so you've had to have a few of those moments where you separate it. To go, this is a business decision. We're all human, right? I've made a couple mistakes. I think the biggest one early on was I sent a check by accident to the wrong company and they cashed it. Ooh. And, doing some things like that and going, that's a big deal, but knowing you're not going to get fired, right? But how you have to have that communication. So defining that was being flexible along the way. And then knowing that because we have a good family dynamic, we were together outside of work. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, it was easier for you to maybe at first talk about things. We'd talk just because you're going, oh, hey, did you see that email or do that? And we still do that a little bit, but knowing that those big conversations are going to be saved for when you're sitting in the office and when it's work related. You have to have that separation at least a little bit, right, to not seep into all, and plus the rest of our family doesn't want to hear about it all the time either.
Yeah, they don't want to hear about it, and just because they're not there all the time, they don't understand. So it's what we found out a couple of times where Marcy, would be like, hey, something's going on or whatever. We're like, no, you didn't understand that conversation, mm-hmm, in terms of how it was, and we've communicated and we are fine. So there would be times where we were probably more fine a lot of times than, a family member thought, oh, Brittany and Dad, there's something going on. No, they just didn't understand and that we're communicating and doing pretty well.
And that's probably, you said that, and going a little bit deeper, it is, I do communicate with my mom. My mom's one of my best friends. And so that getting a little bit personal, but hopefully, being able to help anyone else in this situation is I would tell my mom something about work, right? And she's sitting here as a mother and then as a wife going, Ken, this is what's happening, and she feels this way.
Now I'm supposed to fix everybody's problem.
And so we've had to have that as well to go, or if I'm talking to him about money issues, well, he pays my salary, right? Or paid my salary at the time that you're talking about it. And so then or I'm talking to my mom about that. And then all of a sudden it gets back to him and she's like, you need to pay Brittany more money, or you need to do this to make it work. And he's like, she hasn't come to me and said that. I'm just a kid talking to my parents going, gosh, daycare is expensive, and gosh, groceries are expensive. So working through some of those things and talking to mom and finding those boundaries.
Yeah, I think boundaries is a good word, whatever on there, where we have had conversations with mom, through that to go, hey, you got to understand that sometimes Brittany is being your, best friend, she's telling you these things, and it's not because she wants you to do anything about them. She's just getting them off her chest, whether it's, just the same things that most young couples struggle with. And just setting those, I think, was helpful.
Ken, tell us a little overview of Harvest Financial Group. Tell us a little bit about your practice, the makeup, the size, services you offer.
Sure. We do holistic financial planning, and been doing that for a little over 20 years. When a partner and I formed Harvest Financial Group, started off just purely, honestly, serving retirement income planning. That's how we hung our shingle, and that's what we did. Size for a long time was just myself and an assistant in terms of office staff. Brittany's been that assistant in that role for 9 years until about a year and a half ago, when she, as you read off, got fully licensed and had the opportunity, to start developing her own clients. I also sold her a block. I had bought a block of business 6 years ago, and I sold her a portion of that. And so that's kind of how we work.
Now, you said something that reminded me of something you said. When it came to communication and effective communication, and again, what's interesting is as we're having this conversation, I'm realizing that these are the points that we're making here that I hope people are writing down, that we're emphasizing on communication. They affect any advisor relationship, but more so a family practice. But you mentioned just a second ago, you said, if I have something on my mind, I don't let it sit for a week. And when we were talking a couple days ago, you mentioned you mentioned that we don't let things fester. Tell me a little more about that.
Well, I think, just like Ken said, things grow in any relationship, right? Whether that's family, whether that's a husband and wife, or friendship, colleagues. We have just found it so much easier. If something's on your mind or something's going on, you have to say it. And it's not always easy, and it feels uncomfortable, or you called it, courageous conversations, to just put that out there. And if you put it out there, a lot of times you find out that it's a miscommunication, right? No one's intentionally waking up in the morning thinking, I want to piss that person off today, right? Or make them mad. And that, again, is a broad picture of relationships that I think we all can think about. But if we are able to kind of talk about it and get it out there and go, this is where I'm coming from, this is where he's coming from, you go, okay, and you move on. And it just makes it easy when that becomes your habit. And part of that is finding the time and making the space to do that.
And it's in a non-threatening environment. And I think it's we're trying to speak the truth in love. So it's not like we're trying to demean the person or make them feel bad or whatever in that process, either way, because I'm making it sound like it's a one-way deal. There's things or whatever that, I needed to improve to, hey, when you do this, it makes me feel like this. Well, can't argue with her feelings, so that's what it's doing. So let's talk through that.
So I've seen this a lot in practices where unsuccessfully a child comes to work in the practice, and there's the expectation by the junior thinking that they're just going to take over dad's business and everything's going to get handed to them. Tell me a little bit about how you, Brittany, are building your book of business, because just a little bit ago you introduced the fact that you bought a book, you sold part of that book to Brittany. So it's not like here's your silver platter.
Right.
Tell us
I might back up just a little bit from that, and when Brittany came on, it wasn't as a junior advisor initially. I mean, she was just getting ready to have baby, and was basically being the service rep or sales assistant, whatever, in there, and did that for many years. And there was even then an open communication to go, if this is what you want to do, and to have that work-life balance, and don't ever want to be an advisor, that's okay. I'm fine with that. And so let's just kind of take it as it comes, and as you build your family and do your thing and see what that looks like. It's only in the last couple of years. So I think you tell me whether 3 or 4 years where you said, yes, I probably want to start beyond a life license. I want to get licensed and do some things. But it's just been an evolving process that there was never any pressure to say, here's what you've got to do. Let's just, take it as, not necessarily take it as it comes, but let's take it as we, see how things go and what your desires and what you want to do.
Yeah. So how we decided that was, it was multiple conversations. Like Ken said, it never was like, hey, by this date, this is what's going to happen. Sure. We flowed with that with my family and our practice and things like that. So he decided to keep, roughly his top 200 or so clients. And the plan then was for me is to buy the rest through a 5-year period. Okay, he still gets a part of those for at least 5 years, as well as overrides on anything else I write from just a business standpoint. That's what we decided worked best for us. And it was easy with some of that because I had been around for so long. People weren't shocked, right? And Ken's still there as a mentor, and we made it very clear to the clients of the book that I bought to go, Ken's not going anywhere. And again, most of them were fine with that because I'd been in the picture for so long. It wasn't like we'd brought someone brand new from the outside that you had to integrate. It just naturally flowed in to that process.
Well, and before she makes me sound too nice, whatever, on that whole process, it's also worked out great because I've never been a person who was sitting with the individuals, whatever, where I'm the only person, dentist, that's ever going to meet with you, and I'm going to see you, and I'm doing everything. Yeah, it's always been the team, and some people operate that way, and that's great. It fits them, right? For us, that's never fit me. So Brittany has been, working through, had those relationships with people. And for me now to say, hey, I'm still here and she's doing it, it was just a natural part of the process. Even though she's still getting paid, it's that's helping because she still has an incentive to know that I'm getting paid to help service this. But it's also, Dad plans on working for another 10 years as long as the good Lord gives me health and I'm get into 70s or longer. But if he doesn't, she understands whatever that her and Chase are there to step in and take care of that business. So it works all the way around. Yes, it's worked well for her because she hadn't had to go just say, hey, whoa, I'm stopping my salary and I'm going to go out on a commission as whatever I can, I'm going to eat only what I kill. It's worked great for us as well. And I don't think, I probably wouldn't have been as prone to do that in a non-family relationship, but as I think through it, it's worked phenomenal.
This has worked out with your daughter, and you're managing this relationship has worked out so well that you added Chase, who you just mentioned a second ago, your son, and you're bringing him. Is he following kind of Brittany's career path, or what do you have him doing?
Yeah, great question.
And he's in the room, so he probably wants to know.
Yeah. He does know, and we talked about that while he was still in college, getting his degree in financial planning. Is that his skill set was different. Having Chase sit down, he can do paperwork, but having him start off as an assistant in an administrative role was not going to be not only be in his skill set, but not be what he wanted to do.
It would be a detriment to our business.
Yeah. Fortunately, he did
in that role.
Brittany had obviously great skills. But she didn't have the college degree or whatever on financial planning. So Chase has taken that now and really is being my junior planner and has freed me up, because if you're going to pay somebody as a business owner, it's either going to free you up for more time to do the things that you ought to be doing, or free you up to things that you want to do, like playing golf and pickleball. And one of those things ought to happen. So Chase has done phenomenal, where he's helped improve a lot of our processes, made some of our worksheets, whatever, much easier to work with, where we used to handwrite required minimum distributions information when we sit down with a client. In that situation, Chase built an Excel spreadsheet, and we can put that out there before, and it's we give one to the client so they see all that in front of them as well. And so he's functioning as a junior planner from that aspect. We're very fortunate to have Amber Tenike, who I mentioned earlier, who started working with us early December, who loves doing paperwork and truly loves doing it and calling clients, isn't afraid to get on the phone. So we're very, very blessed and very, very fortunate to have a team where using their individual gifts and their unique abilities to be able to serve our clients as a team.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, you touched on, talking about different abilities. When I came on as well, I think it's looking at what that person, he talked about skills, and I, laughed and said Chase would be a detriment. That's because that's not his skill set. So what are you going to do and do well? When I started, his previous assistant, way back when, used to do, all of the bookkeeping, if you will, for him, and she'd, do everything sort of shining his checks. That was not me. And so Ken took that over and go, okay, you deal with the relationships and you spend on this side. What do you, who can we focus on as a team? And just because he goes, well, I'm the advisor, I shouldn't have to. That wasn't the attitude, right? It's what are you all good at and how can you use that to, for the best, to better your clients, to better your practice and to do the best for your clients.
Well, so in the practice now, let's talk teamwork and dynamic just a little bit. So one, I have to imagine that clients love the optics of a multi-generational practice, knowing that if something were to happen to you, that there's somebody there that knows them. How do you introduce Brittany and Chase into the mix? How do you introduce the team?
Yeah, great question. I mean, so now you're talking somebody brand new who's coming in, because the clients we've talked about for the whole process. So somebody brand new, it's basically, we talk about Brittany as a junior advisor, and she's got her own clients, and depending on the situation, if we think two heads are better than one, and it's a referral that I'm getting from my client and coming in, I'll make that decision and say, hey, Brittany, I'd like you to work with me on this. Same thing, Brittany, we had a case last week where, yes, it was a referral just from one of her clients, but it was a deal where it's like, hey, it involved a farming operation. Dad's got more experience here because of the size and the complexity. Hey, would you come along on that meeting or whatever to me? So that's how we'll work through that. Chase, I introduced as a junior planner. He's got all his tests taken or whatever. He's got the 65 coming up here in April. And we'll get him, all E&O and those sorts of things and start building his clients as well. But I introduce him. He is involved in that new meeting. It'll either be Brittany or I'll pull Chase into that meeting so he can hear firsthand what the clients and what the prospect is saying. He's going to put the first draft of that plan together if he's the one that's been pulled in or whatever on that. And I'm going to work on oversight, which is a little interesting because that's what I did for 20 years and now I'm turning that over to somebody else. But he's doing a great job. He's also working then as we meet with existing clients. Chase is doing all the prep work for putting the investment summary together, updating net worth and cash flow, talking about RMDs. He's doing the background on that, so he's coming into those meetings. Amber pointed out she worked for an eye doctor for 12 years, and occasionally I'll leave a meeting and Amber says, eye doctor would never have left that client or whatever alone. And I said, well, this is a different situation or whatever. One is sometimes I've given them something to think about and I want to walk out of the office, but other times or whatever, the reason is I want Chase coming in there, so I want to introduce him so that they do continue to see us as a team.
Mm-hmm. How do you, to roll back just a second, in situations where you bring the other, as a colleague now, there's so many different hats here, it's great. So you have the colleague hat on and you say, Ken, I want you to come in on this one, I need your expertise, or vice versa. Out of curiosity, without any percentages, do you do a client split there, or is that how you do it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about it. We have a couple of different splits, and we'll share the numbers. I mean, if we're sharing that business together, it's going to be a 50-50 where we're both going to be meeting and doing joint work on that. If somebody's the primary or whatever on it, Brittany, she's going to get 70%. I'm going to get 30%. Part of that 30% is I'm still paying for the building. I'm still paying her. I'm still paying rent. And I think some of those are MDRT, numbers and percentages that we've looked at from the past. And we just think that's a fair model. But again, we'll be flexible as that evolves over time. And I'm not paying her, and she's like, hey, I'm willing to pay part of the rent and pay some of the admin staff like Amber. We'll totally revisit that and just do what's fair.
Yeah, and I think being flexible with that again is the biggest. We listened to a bunch of different people. We looked at just non-family practices and how they're bringing people on, and then we looked at family practices and to go, okay, here's all the different pieces. What works best for us, and what's gonna how are we going to move through that? And I think, again, being open, and we laughed as a staff the other day because, Amber said, it's great working for a family until they argue about, money. It's like, no, we're not arguing about money. We're discussing and going, hey, this client's coming in, and how do we think that's going to work? And at the end of the day, I hope, Ken doesn't ever feel taken advantage of, and I hope that he feels like what I'm doing is worth it, right? I mean, people would joke, clients come in and go, have you given her a raise yet? This was how many years ago? And he goes, I do, but she earns every penny of it. And I think just, again, having that communication, because that can, money, right? It can be attention. And so you work in the business and you're paying somebody and you know the ins and outs, and what I'm, paying for my house and what my kids' education cost and all those kind of things, and trying to keep that fair. But anyway, point is just being able to communicate and be flexible on that as it comes through.
As we come to a close, I'm going to ask you each the same question. So Ken, the question, and I'll start with you as the senior. As a dad, we look back 9 years to 2012, and so you're just about to make that call to Brittany. What advice would you give to another advisor that would be in that same place? What advice would you give to them that you've learned over maybe the last 9 years?
Yeah, set fair expectations, be flexible, speak the truth in love. And if you can do that and work well together, you will find synergy, and you will find that 1 + 1 = 3. And that would be, I had no idea. If you would have told me 9 years ago that, we would have our own building, that Brittany would be working with me, Chase would be working with me, and we'd have a wonderful assistant, helping us, we'd have that team. I'm not the entrepreneur who's dreaming, to that goal, but always try to be prepared for what the next opportunity, whatever would be, and then be ready to go there. So, probably more than what you asked for, but set expectations and having clear communication and speak the truth in love.
I like it. That would be good advice to anybody that's hiring. So now, Brittany, this is always the hard part because you heard part of his answer, which was great. But so we're back in 2012. So what advice would you give to somebody considering working with their parent?
Like I said at the beginning, I think you have to have a good foundation relationship. If you're going, I don't really like you as a person, hopefully we're probably not considering that anyway, but you have to have that there and be prepared to keep that communication open and be flexible along the way. We work because we're probably wired very similarly. I mean, I wouldn't consider myself, we're on the same page when it comes to our business model and going, 1 to 2 clients a month is what, new clients a month is what we want to bring into our practice, just because we focus on serving the existing flock that's there. So keeping that communication open, keeping flexibility there. I'm a goal setter in the fact that I'd write down maybe some ideas that I have in my head, if we could go this way or we could go this way, and where does that lend itself to? And just being able to be flexible with that. So, echoing Ken, I think communication is the huge theme that we've said, and being flexible. If you're thinking about getting started in that family relationship, it's the communication and knowing how each other's wired a little bit, whether that's your strengths or weaknesses, and just because maybe that role was defined in one way in the past doesn't mean it has to be defined that way going forward.
All right, I told you that was a fantastic conversation with Ken and Brittany. Like I mentioned before, Ken has added his son into the practice successfully, and they're doing fantastic. Now, what would be fantastic as well is if you hit the like and subscribe button. If you hit the subscribe button, that way you're always in the know whenever we drop a new episode. Also, I would love to hear your comments, your suggestions. We look at them, we read them, we respond. That being said, I look forward to seeing you at the next episode.
This podcast is for financial professional use only and not for use with the general public. The information provided is the exclusive property of Creative One and is protected by copyright and other intellectual property laws of the United States. This material has been prepared for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended to provide, and should not be relied upon for, accounting, legal, tax or investment advice. Creative One is not responsible for the results of programs discussed on this podcast or any liability stemming from the use of it. Although we may promote or recommend the services offered by this company, agents are ultimately responsible for the use of any materials or services and agree to comply with the compliance requirements of their broker-dealer and registered investment advisor, if applicable, and the insurance carriers they represent. Copyright 2022, Creative One Marketing Corporation.